Happy Sunday. Happy Marathon Sunday.
Happy Marathon Sunday.
I was struggling and somebody was like, ran by. She was like, come on, you can do this. And sometimes that's what it takes. And then I just started running like through all my cramps. But she was like, best day ever. And then that reminds me of like our workouts when like we're struggling, we're just like, best day ever. So like I just repeated it back. I was like in the zone and I was like, yeah, like this is what we're here for.
Best day ever is definitely one of those things that I kind of like refer back to, just on like days where I kind of don't feel like going to it too. I'm like, best day ever.
Yeah.
Best day ever. But I can relate to, there was a dude I passed by and he was like, you're so close, come on. And I was like, I had just started like walking, caught like a little slight cramp in my calf. And I was like, nah, I gotta keep going.
Yeah.
And so it causes you to like pick back up. Like it definitely helps you pick back up the pace. It gives you like that extra motivation that you need.
And that was good because there was just so many people there. I don't know the count, but I know that we got you here today. You're the first time on the podcast. So I try to introduce people, but I thought about this earlier. I was like, so I like to hear how people introduce themselves. So who are you?
My name is Dontavious Davis. I am a tattoo artist, creator, painter, mental health advocate, curator. What else am I?
Two-time
half marathon runner. I'm a sports and anime enthusiast, so like the list goes on. I got a lot of things I can name about myself.
Yeah, we'll touch on a couple of those things, but I wanted to do this today. Normally I do them on Sunday mornings, but we're like 6 p.m. Day after I did the Austin full marathon, you did the Austin half. It's your second time doing it. It's my second time doing the full also. But we were planning on having lunch afterwards, but I'm like, you know what, let's not. We did it last year because like I know over lunch we're gonna like talk about all this stuff. So what was it like for you running this year's half marathon?
To be honest, I started comparing it to last year's, like as soon as I got started. And one of the things like you've known that I've kind of struggled with like over through this year is like posture, just balance in like different parts of my body. And as you remember, like when we used to go on like our long runs in the mornings, there would always be like this point where I would get to like that 6th or 7th mile and like when my feet would start to kind of fall asleep, like I would kind of just lose a little bit of like that feeling in it. And it's been an interesting journey as far as like trying to correct like those postures, those slight, what do you want to call them? Like just micro tweaks in your body and just being aware of them. So I feel like there was like a mental hold whenever I would get to like mile 6, 7, or 8, and I would kind of like really be aware of my body, like, is it finna do it again? Is it gonna do it again? But it was also like a fear at the same time because this 13-mile marathon this is the longest run that I've did since the one last year. So I was like, am I gonna end up getting to that point? And by the time I got to like mile 13 and finished, like this was the first time I was able to like run that distance without having like that problem come up. And as we were like working through it and I realized it was a problem in my body, like just like little mental things arose. I was like, damn, like, am I kind of broken? You know what I'm saying? Is fixing this thing even like possible? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because we all have like different bodies. And that was kind of one of the things that I went through, like just being in the marathon. Like we all have different vehicles to get to where we're going, like different tools, different assets, you know what I'm saying? And you just have to use what you have. And like you kind of have to shape it to work for you at the same time.
Yeah. So my experience with you, you've pretty much been on like the first mentorship program when we opened this place, which was like since August of 2022. Were you doing any running before then or working out consistently? Like what was that like before then? So that was like really, you were just getting started.
It was nothing.
Yeah.
Like it would be the occasional like push-ups, maybe go to the gym, but no, it was like kind of just wake up, tattoo, go out, have some drinks, repeat.
Yeah.
And like rinse and repeat like every other day.
And then we started doing like 5Ks, we were doing burpees, and we were doing remotely because you were living in North Carolina, or North Carolina or South?
Yeah, I was in North Carolina still, I was in Charlotte.
Yeah. And I think in that group, and I feel like online, I've gotten a lot of people to run and they'll tag me in their runs, in their half marathons, their marathons, and it's really cool to see people like pushing and doing it. And I've seen so many people run and they give me they share like their wins and stuff. Just even for you, like doing like those 5Ks or when we used to do burpee calls every Sunday. But the one thing I never realized until we started to train in person together was like, not everyone has correct form, or they're not even aware of it, right? Like they're just running with whatever they have, and that's just like the baseline until they know differently.
I don't know if you remember, but that first mentorship when we went for that run and the workout, I was still like running out in like Air Force Ones, and that's nowhere near a running shoe. But running shoe, workout shoe, like when I talked to Lath, he was like, "Wait, you're running in those?" Yeah. I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I never knew the difference. Like I didn't know that they were supposed to be like a difference in like the shoes that I'm supposed to run in and work out. I thought they were just like, okay, based off comfort.
Yeah.
And I was like, these shoes feel comfy to me, so I'm just gonna run in them.
Yeah. And then we would get together when we were doing the in-person mentorships, or you would fly in to kind of come visit. Seeing you work out and just running, and your foot was falling asleep often. We were doing squats, and like just the form was a little bit different. So I'm just like, all right, like what is it? And then we had to really dial it back down, because you were squatting heavy, but it wasn't like you were moving the weight, but it wasn't like safe or with proper form. So then it was, all right, let's roll back the weight. And we got to a point where we're just working on bars, like just the 45-pound bar, and then we got to just body weight. And then it was just like, we were spending quite a bit of time on mobility, which is like walking a plank, just seeing if you could like even bend your feet. And that's some of the things that I've talked to people about. It's like, yeah, like Don was running and he's doing a half marathon, and he's done another one before, but he never bent his foot, right? Like your feet were just flat. And do I have it right that like it's just you don't want to crease your shoes?
Yeah, I got so used to like walking without like wanting to crease my shoes at the same time. And it's just like a thing ever since I was in like middle school. Yeah. Like just habits that developed over time. And then once I got to like high school, started lifting weights, different things like that, people would like, I noticed like some coaches would see like, hey, why can't you do this? Why is this way? Yeah. But there was never any like extra time or effort to where somebody was like, okay, let's try to like correct this thing. It was more of just like, oh, this is different for you. Like, so I was like, oh, that's just like the way my body is. Yeah. But it's like, no, you can change these things. Like there are mechanics that are supposed to work a certain way. They're supposed to feel a certain way. Yeah. But nobody like really breaks that down to you, especially like in high school weight training, depending on where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things of like, I would watch people running on this past marathon, and you're not at a place to just like give any guidance when you're struggling, or just even at all, because like that's the day that they've trained for. That's how they show up. I've seen this one lady towards the very end, really enthusiastic at the end of a marathon. She was wearing like the Superwoman outfit, and she would like come up and like, she was trying to like coach and motivate and like run and just like get people to go. And like, you could just tell other people like, just leave them. Like we're at the end of this half marathon. We're just trying to get to the finish line. But it was really cool to see her like try to push that. But I was also watching some people and kind of like concerned, and just kind of like watching their form, because like at some point, if you're not running properly or you're just super exhausted, there's more chances for trips, more chances for injury. And like, that's the one thing that when I was watching you like squat, we could have just left it, but I was like, no, long term, like even if you wanted to just up the weight, there was going to be more
chance of like injury.
Yeah, more chance of injury. So now like you've kind of like fixed, you're able to bend your feet now.
Yeah.
You're able to run without your foot falling asleep as long.
Dude, like I didn't think like, I thought that was gonna be the case for like a long time, like the foreseeable future. And I was like, dang, I don't wanna have like this thing attached to me. You know what I'm saying? Like knowing that like my body doesn't work like a certain way or the way that I would want it to. So overcoming that, I was like, okay, this gives me like a lot of confidence in other areas, especially going forward, just like building up your physique. Like you wanna be like a strong person, especially like I'm 26 years old. Like I want to be the strongest I can be now, so that I can carry that on like 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on.
But when did that, was that like kind of introduced during the mentorship, where at some point you were like, I know this needs to happen, or there was just no thought about it before?
I knew like working out was important, like staying in shape and different things like that. But I just didn't know to the degree of how you were supposed to like take care of your body. Certain muscle groups, certain muscles. Like I was like, as long as you can be able to run, you know what I'm saying, lift a little bit of weights. And if you work out and exercise, that's the most important thing. But that is the most important thing, but also at the same time, there are certain aspects of these muscles like you have to strengthen that are going to help you out in the future. Yeah. And if you neglect them, like you're going to feel that neglect later. And that was like my main point of like wanting to just build my body up in those areas where I could feel like needed attention.
Yeah. I don't think people need to run a marathon or a half. I don't think people need to be able to squat heavy amounts of weights or like just whatever these, I feel like I push more on, and I compare myself to like a lot of the people I'm familiar with, like who are like elite performers. Like I'm nowhere near them, but compared to a lot of people that I know, like no one needs to like wake up super early and work out at a particular time. Like, you work out whenever it works for your time. You don't need to run ultra marathons, or you don't need to like squat and go for heavy PR. But I do think it's important to have functional strength and mobility. And then at some point, like if you can like build the additional strength as well, then it's always going to be super beneficial. I imagine me when I get older, I don't want to be 80 or 90, and if I don't need to, be hunched over or need assistance just because I've neglected my body. Like I want to be, I've seen videos of like 80-year-olds like still doing pull-ups and running. And it's like, to me, that's functional, right? Where like every day they know they must move a certain amount to take care of the body. And especially for us as tattooers, we're hunched over and still for 8 hours plus a day. Like we need to like counter that with being able to work out and run. And that's been the biggest challenge for me, is like with all the things that I have going on, it's like, well, how do I make sure I hit all those things? And this season, I did way better than last year, because last year I did I think it was like 520. I forgot the number, 520. Wait, if I did this year, all right, so this year I did 447.
Nice.
Right? And I shaved it by like 31 minutes off of last year's time.
Hell yeah.
And I attributed that to like doing more training. But at the same time, I'm aware that like I have all these other areas that I'm trying to do, which is like, I also still want to strength train. And I still want to get adequate sleep for tattooing. And I think that was part of my training that kind of set me back, where like by mile 16, that's where I felt a lot of the hurt, right? Last year it was after 13 miles. So like I pushed 3 more miles, and I was set to be on track. I think I ran 1:59 for a half marathon pace.
Nice.
And then up until like mile 16, I was slowing down to a point of like walking and then running for like 2 or 3 minutes and then walking again. But just being able to still work out, but it was like figuring out like what's a priority. And as much as I know like fitness is a priority, if I can't get adequate sleep and perform for a tattoo, it's not a good thing either, right? So there were some mornings where I was supposed to go run, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like I had a late day yesterday, I've got a tattoo tomorrow, like I'm gonna sleep in. And I've been going through this thing of like not feeling bad about it, because like it's how you prioritize what's important to you. There was a period of time where it was like, no matter what, I'll get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I got my workout in, felt like a champion. But then the rest of the day, I was like falling asleep with my daughter, getting tired during the tattoo. And like, I don't want to have to do that, So it's like just figuring out like what the priority was. But getting some strength training, some cardio, some flexibility and mobility is like an absolute must.
No, I feel that. I definitely understand. How were your thoughts once you got past like that 16-mile mark? Like, what was your inner dialogue starting to sound like as you were making it through like mile 16 to mile 26?
So when I hit that wall, my leg completely locked up, and like I couldn't bend my left leg anymore.
Damn.
It just cramped, and everything was like just tight. And then I was like, all right, I'm not gonna stop, because I don't think that helps. I'm just gonna walk it off. And it was like I was coming to a slow, and I was doing about like a 9-minute pace, way faster than I should have, but I just let that energy carry me through, because I was like, I'm gonna empty the tank today. I'm gonna like, I'm not running slower, like I'm gonna like push and see what I can do, and I wanna get to that finish line. And I felt really great up to like 16 miles, and then I could slowly start to feel like the cramps were like pulsating in my legs. And then once my leg locked up, I slowed down to like a 17-minute pace. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna slow it down a bit. But then I was like, well, if I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna fast walk it. So I was walking between like 14 minutes to 15-minute miles, just to like, let me compensate for it and not stroll, right? And if I can just fast walk it, I can make up some time, and then I'll find some times to like sprint it down a hill, right? Because if I was going uphill, my calves, my quads were cramping, and I was like, well, let me just like fast walk it and run when I can. So I was taking every opportunity to run, but a lot of times I was just like head down, and I was just like one foot in front of the other, like you still have legs, keep moving, and let's go as fast as you can. And I passed by some veterans, and one guy had both of his legs amputated right above the knee, and he had synthetic legs on the bottom. And I was just like, all right, like I'm good. I got both my legs. I can keep walking.
Yeah, you can't really have an excuse if you got legs.
So a lot of it was just like a shift from, I think also like feeling bad because I was just like, damn, I really wanted to hit my time. I don't think I'm gonna make it. Feeling like a failure, you know, but I'm just like, dude, like, just don't quit. Get to the finish line. At least if you don't make your goal, you can beat last year's time. And then there were some times where like I was trying to run to make up for time, and then it was cramping really bad again. I was like, fuck. And I had one little break, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can finish this. And I'm like, you can walk. And I was timing it, and I was like, you can definitely make it by like 4:59. I can make it like just shy under 5 hours. But I made it back in 5:40.
4:47. You said.
4:47. So just to be able to like finish,
Nice.
that was like, any distance of running is challenging. Like I remember 5Ks used to be hard when I would go for like the color run. You ever heard of a color run?
I haven't heard. What is a color run?
So a color run is like, they give you these packets of powder, and it's like a 5K fun run. Everyone just kind of dresses up as whatever. You wear these white shirts, and at the end of the marathon, there's like this color festival. So like you rip open your powder, you throw it in the air, and everyone's colored with like all
Different
this colored
colors.
powder. And this was pre-COVID. They don't do that shit anymore, I think.
That sounds a little messy.
But then after that, there's music, there's food and vendors, and it's like you're just
nice.
kind of like, you're hanging out. It's a fun 5K run. Then eventually I did a 10K, and each event that I did, they were all hard. A 5K, a 10K. I've done 2 half marathons. And this is my second full, so I'm like, I did 2 marathons, and I beat last year's time. I finished them. So like, I had to like reframe to be like, I finished, I completed, I improved my time, and then I'm gonna sign up again for next year, and
Nice.
like, I'll beat it again, you know?
And the thing is too, I feel like when it comes to full marathons, like this is my second time running a half, and I still feel like I'm a new runner. Like I've been running for 2 years now, a year and some change around there. And 13 miles is far.
Yeah.
Like, that's a long way to run.
What was your time?
My time this year was 2:30.
2:30.
2:30. So I shaved off 5 minutes from last year. It was 2:35 after I like double checked.
Yeah.
So, but still, yo, that's a long way.
It's a long time to run.
And also you have to factor in the course. This isn't like a flat plane that we're running on. Like we're running in a downtown setting of Austin, and there are hills, there are curves, and you're just running on concrete. And then you have to run with and around people.
Yeah.
Like navigating through the crowd is its own aspect too. Yeah, at one point after I went around the curve, I thought they were handing out electrolytes. He handed me a beer.
Oh,
And I
did you drink it?
Yeah, on accident. And I was like, this isn't what my body needed right now.
Yeah, so I really appreciated the volunteers. I really appreciate the extra people who like cut up bananas. Some guy made a peanut butter jelly sandwich. When I was struggling,
awesome.
I was like, thank you for that. I got some oranges. And I saw a lot of beers. I saw a lot of fireball shots.
Dude,
I was just like, no.
How was it still pretty, like a lot of people as far as passing out like different snacks and stuff like that, even after like the half-mile mark?
Yeah, so I remember I told you, I was like, it gets dead after the half marathon mark. But really, like once you get to certain key points, and there's like, dude, I felt the energy like around the church. Like just the church energy was really good. There were different run groups set up, and just even certain intersections on major streets. Like just a horde of crowd would be there, and lots of people with like power up signs. So like, especially with like people who had those, it was just like a mental thing of like, I'm just gonna tap this sign, and it was just like that little energy to like get out of my head and get back onto the trail. And then there was also like little kids like wanting a high five, and like it was just cool because like I've got little kids, and my kids couldn't make it for the finish line, but just to like see that, you know, that energy exchange was really appreciated. But for me, being able to run that course again, I still forgot, I think, 2 important things. And number 1 was like, I went out way faster than I should have. And like when I look at my heart rate, like it's orange and red in the very beginning. And then I taper down to like where I'm feeling good, like somewhere in the middle. So I was able to get to a really good place then. And then at the end, I forget how hilly this run is. Like it's not an easy flat course at all. There's definitely at least I think it's a 300 feet elevation gain.
I didn't even know it was that
but
much.
throughout, you're going up, you're going down, and just to like go to that. Even though I was training, my pace that I was training for is mostly flat. So I was trying to like make up for that time. When there was a downhill, I was bombing it, and I was doing like 8:35, and then there was some points where like I was going uphill and I was doing like 8:55, which is again super fast for my race day pace. But I think again, when you go for race day, it's like it's what you remembered, skill, technique, tactics, and it shows you who you are at that particular time. Me and you were talking about in the car driving over, like, I wonder what's gonna pop up in our heads when we're going for a run. Number one, some people think I'm psycho because I don't run with any music. Like, I like being in my headspace because like it really gives me a chance to hear what's going on. And there was a part of me that was very challenged because I'm like, dude, I wish I could have trained or prepared better for it. I wish I could have kept my pace. I wish I would have trained for like some hills and stuff. And there was a point where I was just like beating myself up. And I was like, where's all this coming from, right? And like, I just spent I think like maybe 2 or 3 miles, like trying to talk out or just like be aware and like let those thoughts go. I'm like, it's a challenge regardless, you know? So I was like, I'm just gonna like sit in this and just like constantly like self-correct those thoughts that I have. Like, you're here, you're running it, you're pushing, you're doing better than last year. Like, I was like trying to be my own cheerleader. And I don't like using external motivation, so that's why I don't listen to music. Some of the other people around me, it was like, if it's there, it's there, right? Like, if the music is playing, I'll listen, I'll take it in. If someone's saying something, I'll take it in. But like, when I'm going through like just shit in life in general, like, if I don't have music or someone else to like motivate me or like talk me out of it, this to me is like training grounds to like work through those things and also like identify like where it comes from, you know? And again, I'm in like a personal development space. I follow a lot of fitness people as well. So like just that, the language and the mindset around there, you still have to learn how to like tweak that so that it's positive and beneficial and like mentally okay for me to use. Because I'm just like, no, like I've got to like tweak this so that like I can support myself through hard times like the run, but also anywhere else.
I feel that. Piggybacking off of what you said, I feel like it's very important that we take time to be aware of like the relations that our thoughts and our feelings have with one another and make sure that it's like a healthy one. Because you want to go into something, especially something like this, with giving yourself all like the support that you can. And I feel like that's where a lot of people can tend to fall short in, not just in something like a marathon, but in anything you're doing. Like, you got to make sure you're giving yourself enough to give at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, you don't lose anything in thinking that you can do good at this thing. And I feel like the only thing that kind of comes with feeling bad or like doubting yourself is kind of like mispreparing. Like, I feel like even with that, you knew you prepared for it, but you were like, I can't do, like, beating yourself up to a point, even though like there were no ways to prepare for these exact hills, this exact range. You know
I can find ways. Like, I could have gone down there and ran it, ran the course. So I look at those things and I'm like, I'm overanalyzing, and I'm trying to think of like, if you really wanted to be better at it, like what could, how much of an extra mile? But I was kind of stretching myself thin. But I wanted to touch on that because I like to think I generally have like a positive mindset, right? I developed that, but I tell a lot of people about you that you're one of the most positive people that I know, and it's been that way since the beginning. I think that's one of the main working with you during the mentorship program and throughout the time before you got here. There hasn't been a single complaint. There's been no need to vent, or maybe there was a need, but you didn't vent out or anything like that. And that would have been okay if you needed to. But it was one of those things also of like, you showed up to every call, right? There was like, you were always like ready for whatever challenge. And even when we spoke about the marathon last year, I wanted to do it over some time. And then we had 2 clients in here that were like, yeah, we're doing the half marathon. I'm like, fuck, I keep talking about it. I should do it now. And then I looked up and I asked everybody, hey, you want to do a marathon? Hey, you want to do a marathon? And just a few people were like, yeah, I'll do it, or I'll do a half. And like, you knew you wanted to do a half, and like you went through it with like no problem. And then the only time I've seen you upset, and I hope this is a case story to bring, was the one time your mom took your nudie shirt out of your suitcase, right?
Yo.
Coming back home. That's the only time I've seen you like pissed off. There's been times where it's like, man, I'm a little down, or like I'm working through some stuff. But like in general, you always tend to have a positive approach to like how to work through things, or maybe you have again, I like to think that I understand that things are impermanent, but I feel like you have a better grasp on that. Were you always like that? Where does that come from? Like, unpack a healthy, positive mindset, because I don't know if you realize you have that, or if maybe you feel and think otherwise, but to me, there's not a lot of people that like are generally, outwardly at least, like everything's good, everything's cool, and you can be that light for many other people around you.
No, I definitely do feel like it took time to like cultivate it at the same, but I had a very good base and role model for it growing up, like with my mom and my grandma for sure. But I spent a lot of time with like my grandma as a kid, just running errands. She would pick me up from school, like anywhere she was going, like 9 times out of 10, I was in the back seat, just like riding around with her whenever she was like taking care of her dad, different things like that. And with most adults, you kind of get like a glimpse of like what real life is about, or like what real life is like. And I feel like with her, I never saw her willingly be negative about something. Like whatever or situation it was, she was going to be like positive about it. She was going to look into like a positive outlook on the situation. Like she was never down. She never was like getting down on herself about anything. So I feel like that was like the base that I had for it. And it kind of just needed time to cultivate on its own. I spent a lot of time listening to like audiobooks, different things like that when I was working at UPS for like 6 months. So it was literally just me and like boxes for like 6 to 10 hours a night. And at first I was listening to music, like making time go by, just kind of like having fun. But eventually you get tired of listening to the same thing over and over. So you want to like start searching out for something different. So I started just finding like different audiobooks that could help me improve, and just started getting into like self-help books, different things like that. And a lot of those, the core of them is, how are you thinking about these things? So like your inner world is going to be your outer world is going to be a reflection of your inner world. So I was like, okay, how can I put the best out up here to get the best out of like life? And I feel like that's mostly like just where it came from. And it's evolved over time. Like I've gotten better at it too, but it's just consistently picking the brighter side of things. Like you always get a choice to choose how you want to look at different situations, different things that happen. And at that time too, you get to choose kind of like how you feel about things, and to a point. Like you get to choose the thoughts that are going to lead to these feelings.
Yeah, I feel like I have that, but I struggle more often than not. And I think I'm probably in the phase that, well, everyone's different level, but I'm in the phase of like rewiring, reprogramming. For me, it's like doing physical activity, working with people is definitely one of those things. Owning a business is one of those things. Trying to get better at tattooing is another space to like, because we'll always find ways to improve, but then it's just like, oh, looks like shit, or it could be better. And it's like, why didn't you do this instead? And I think it happens more often than not. It doesn't mean that what we're doing isn't good, but I tend to give myself less credit, right, for like what has been done well. And I'm always analyzing on the things that can be improved on. So while that may be like a good trait for self-improvement, which is what I feel like I have, I sometimes struggle with like maintaining like a really like consistent like positive
mental outlook.
mental outlook, because like it's like I'll find like the littlest things that can just be improved on, and like I'll spend energy to like, how can that be done better? But sometimes I feel like if I just be like, oh, that's good, like it may just kind of like slip under the rug and just and not have that. So I feel like perhaps that's why I focus so much on the self-improvement and why like I get certain results. But I've been noticing how that's harmful as well.
No, I definitely feel that. And I definitely feel like there's a balance with that too. Like you have to make sure, like you created like a beautiful space here for like people to tattoo, for people to come into and get tattooed. Like this is a one-on-one experience in itself. But also to add in like when it comes to my life, like our lives are very different even though we work in the same space. Like I feel like my life is simple to a point to where I am just focused on improving my art and taking care of myself. And I feel like in comparison to yours, you also have to think about those things plus family, upkeeping a shop. There are so many more things that are like stacked on top of like what I could possibly have one day, or just different things like that. That's hard to manage. Like even when I think about having these things, I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like it gives me a little bit of anxiety about the future, just thinking about like, are you gonna have to have like this like XYZ responsibility, and it's gonna get there eventually, but you definitely have to make sure you're taking some time, like stop and smell your flowers too.
Yeah.
Like you've done a lot.
Yeah, thank you for that. Like you've said, like you've had a good base. Like I've spent time building my base prior to like getting married, right? Like we've been together now like over 18 years.
That's beautiful.
We're gonna be married for about 10 years. So like there was this 8-year period of like, before we get married, like I was gonna wait 10 years, right? Because I just wanna make sure like this is right, that we're ready, but when are you ever really like ready? Because at the end of the day, there's still gonna be things that arise and we both learn, or people learn through being in relationships, whether it's a work relationship, personal, and then even before having kids, like we waited a few years for that till we both were like, all right, we're ready for it, you know? And each time, I'm very grateful that they weren't accidents, right? Like we planned for them and like you think you're ready, but at the end of the day, kids will expose certain things about you, just like your personality, your traits, your responses and your reactions. And there's still times where it's like, more often than not, if I step back and look at it, like, dude, you're a good dad. But I hone in on the things that are like, you fucking suck. Like, you lost your temper here. My kids bopped their head the other day when we were kind of playing, and like, I felt so bad because my daughter's screaming at the top of her head. Aww. And I'm just like, damn, like, no, I don't want to do this again. Like, I don't want to throw you or play with you, but I'm like, you can still play, but like, accidents will happen. And then like, I'll just kind of wrestle with those things. And then even just like managing a space and just like how I work with people, I feel like I step back and I look at like, in general, it's pretty good, right? But then I look back and I'm just like, how can this part of the day or the interaction be better? And I spend a lot of time to like occupy those things because like I really want my relationships to be better. I really want my workspace, my home space to be better. And there's a Zen saying that like, a good father is not a good father. Is not necessarily a good father. A bad father may be a good father. And the reason why how I understood that was like, you can be like, no, I'm the best dad, or I'm the best tattoo artist, or I'm the best business owner, or I'm the best whatever. But it's like, you're not looking at what's underneath and what can be done better, right? But then you're the type of person that's just like, fuck, like I suck, like, or like this needs to be better, or like I'm a bad husband because I didn't, make a phone call, before, bedtime or whatever the thing is. And it's like, you look on those things because you do want to be better. And at the end of the day, they do appreciate it. You're making the improvements. But I've always just kind of looked at it that as like, I need to find the little things and make them better rather than just be like, everything's cool. Because it's like another Stoic philosophy is like, you take care of the things that are in your control and things that are not, right? So like if it's within my control, if I can influence or like, make the space or the relationship better, I want to pour my energy into that. And it's the thing that I can't, like if it's another person's behavior or if it's like an external within, the outside world, then like I'll just leave it, right? So I know what's not within my energy, but I think that's why I'm always just like, what's within your control that's not good, and like, spending energy on that.
I feel like that's one of the qualities that I really did like about you, like just signing up for your courses, because I was definitely kind of on the opposite end of things, just I feel like a majority of my life. Like if it was good enough, it's good enough.
Yeah.
Like improvements are to be made here and there, but there were just some things. I feel like I didn't run into like that side of myself until it came to like artwork and tattooing. Like even when it came to like school, grades, different things of that nature, like as long as I was getting like a C, B, happy.
Me too.
Like I was never aiming like A's. Like if I got one, cool. Like that's great. But I'm not like super pressed about it. Same thing with like college. Even with jobs that I wasn't super passionate about, I'm like, did I do good enough to like make you happy? Cool, we're even. Like I didn't care to go like too above and beyond for anything until I started like making my own artwork, and then got into the tattoo world, and it was like, okay, I just completely want to be better. Yeah. Like that was a consistent thing that I kind of started to just get into. But then even when I got to a point in tattooing where I could look at some of my stuff and be happy with it, if like the people who were around me at the time were like, yeah, like it's good, I was satisfied with it too. I'm like, oh, they say it's good. But we don't all have the same set of eyes. Yeah. Especially when it comes to like tattooing and different things like that. Like we can look at a tattoo and be like, and we may not like it, but we can grab somebody random and they'll be like, oh, it looks awesome. But it's like they don't see it through the same lens that we do. Yeah. So I definitely feel like that was one of the qualities that I wanted to adopt about my work, just like that analytical side of things, like being able to see it, correct it at the time. Like that was one of the things I definitely wanted to kind of just like add to myself.
Yeah. I was definitely a C and D student. Like as long as I didn't get an F, I was good with that. Yeah. And it's like you care about the things that are important to you, right? So like tattooing right now for both of us, like it's very important. And I try to tread lightly when it comes to like critiquing work, because at the end of the day, like when someone does something, we would assume that's the best that they can do, right? But it's like you also know like there's ways that you can improve on it. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with my work. I was like, when people look at my work, I don't want them to be like, oh, that's nice or cool. Like break it down and also like let me know like what you would have done differently or better. Or even if you have questions, like when I would bring my tattoos to conventions, I would look at artists and the way they would look at my piece, or they would like point or talk about something, and I'm like, oh, they noticed those things. They didn't notice all these other stuff, right? Or even if I make a post online and it's like, all right, well, this post is kind of a dud, you know, like it doesn't get a big reach for it. And it doesn't mean your tattoo's not good, but it's like, you know, what could you have done that would perhaps capture more attention? But it's not necessarily the thing that defines the tattoo also. Like you do a really great piece for the client, they love it, they're happy with it. You know, so I definitely agree that some people don't have the same eyes, but it's like cultivating that space to just like talk about the work. And I think sometimes I may have a hard time with that, which is like, maybe it's not even just like giving enough credit or props for something, but it's always just like, well, what about this area? What did you think about that? You know, so like I'm quick to like help people find their improvements, but just based off of this conversation, I'm like, all right, I may need to like, because I know I'm having a hard time reworking that, and if I put that too much of that pressure, that mindset on other people, there may also be like a lack of appreciation, because like you were saying, our inner thoughts, our inner world reflects like our outer world. So if I'm feeling that way off of the critique and guidance I'm giving myself, am I making other people feel the same way, critiquing and giving guidance in a certain way as well?
I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. And I think something that has helped me when it comes to critiquing is start with what you like about it. And I feel like, because that opens up the door, like, okay, like you're letting them know first and foremost, like there are things about this I like, whether it's tattooing, whether it's artwork or anything. And then you start getting into, then I'm gonna start asking like, well, why did you do things like this? And it's kind of like it's like a ladder. Like I feel like you can ease into critiques, opposed to like, there are different ways people go about it though too. And I feel like different teaching methods or like critiquing, it's all different from like person to person. Like I've had somebody who's looked at the piece I've done, they were like, I think it looks like shit. And I'm like, okay, like why do you think it looks like shit? Yeah. And they were like, I saw the other design you made and I like that one better. So therefore I was like, I think that one looks bad compared to what you could have done with that one. And it was like, okay, if I would have just stopped there, I could have went off on my own assumption and be like, oh, they thought this piece was just badly executed. Like now I'm just leaving myself up to interpretation or like my own thoughts of like what this possibly could have been. But that's on like a person to person basis too. Like people's skin is kind of built different too, especially when it comes to like critiquing. And I feel like, especially with something like art, it can be very sensitive for some people. And for some people it's not. Like you can tell somebody like, oh, I think this was bad. You could have did better on this and that, but okay. And some people you can tell that and it's like heartbreaker, it fucking crushes them. Yeah. So it's so different, and like you kind of have to gauge it a little bit, but and then if it's somebody new, you don't even know how. Like you
Yeah.
don't know this person, how they receive these things.
You gotta learn their personality and like how much feedback they really want.
And some people don't want it.
Yeah.
Some people like want to be like told, tell me how good this is.
I can't be around people like that.
No. Because most likely your shit isn't that good if that's is completely how you feel about it. Like, all my shit looks good. Like, if that's the case, when I have seen that, it's somebody who's gotten really comfortable and they haven't looked for any other growth in those areas.
A lot of the best artists that I know, my favorite artists, like they're constantly finding ways to change or to get better at it. And what you were saying about those two types of people, I kind of like when people take it personal to a point where it's like constructive. Like it doesn't just like, you know how to receive it. It's just like, damn, you know what? You're right. That weighs on me. Yeah. And I feel like if you didn't do something right or it could be done better or like, you should kind of feel bad about it because I could have made this better. And that applies a little bit more pressure towards you. Then there's other people just like, okay, cool. Or like, whatever. And it's like, do you not care? But then there's also some people like, got it. And you don't need to make a big deal out of it as well. Whenever I was getting critiqued, like I always wanted to hear like, well, what is it about this piece that you would do differently? And I know like I can kind of hear when some people are like working up the ladder.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, just let me know. Like what would you have done differently? And we have to also learn when we want to like absorb that critique. In the sense of like, and I speak about that here, which is like, you have to make your decision for why you have to understand your decision making for why you did this. And if you did it like, no, like I needed to do that because the way that the shape is or this lighting or this texture, that's why I did that. Then it's like, okay, you have your reason for doing things a certain way. But if it shines a new light to be like, oh, okay, I could have done it differently or that might have been better, then you can take that in and now you have that in the back for future references. Other times you can just be like, I don't see what you're seeing, and that's okay, right? Yeah. Like you can just completely leave it at that.
I also piggybacking off of critiquing and receiving information or critiques on things, I feel like it's also really important to kind of not associate, if something came, like you fell short on something or you know you can improve, or you see something and you're like, like it looks like shit to me. I feel like it's really important that you don't identify those things with like yourself. Like knowing that they're separate. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like you made this thing, yes, but this thing isn't like who you are. I feel like a lot of people, they can hear like, I think this looks like shit, and it's like, you're doing shit, and it's like, no,
they're
like,
taking it personal.
Yeah, like you associate that with like your sense of self. And I feel like that's something that's done not just in art, but in like all aspects of life. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people don't know how to receive things and not, even when like something happens to them in life, they'll associate that with like self-image. And I feel like that's what kind of can lead people into like a dark place.
Yeah. So with where you're at with tattooing, what do you see? How would you describe the work that you're doing? And then where do you see the direction of where you want your artwork to go?
That's an interesting question. I can definitely see my work improving. It's getting smoother, it's getting sharper. I'm upping my details and stuff more and more. And I still feel like I'm cultivating like my own style with things. I feel like this year is going to be the year where I kind of like find that signature like look to my stuff. Like I've started to notice like when it comes to like my black and gray, there is like a consistency to it with my realism pieces or even like my illustrated ones with like just the way I shade and different things like that. Like I feel like my pieces are starting to look like mine. And I mean, I love doing like anime stuff too, but I want to definitely focus on doing just more like larger scale projects that have like something to look at, like big imagery, high contrast, like lots of skin space, things that are gonna hold for like years. Like I want you to get that tattoo when you're 20 and that bitch still look just as good when you're 40, 50, like so on and so forth. And I feel like that's built into like these really high contrast images, things that you can see from like across the room and you're like, fuck, that looks amazing. Like still has detail, but also has like a lot of room to breathe. Like it makes me excited, like kind of talking about it. Like I really want to just create like powerful images and like just make people happy.
Yeah, I definitely noticed a change in your work. Like you've been here for about a year now, and like each subsequent one, like if you were to scroll back on Instagram for like prior to a year ago,
it's
the work's just so different. It's like
different.
it's just a different type of artist. What you mind if I give you a little, not feedback on the work?
Go crazy.
But I think some feedback on how to get to that place and where you want to go. This is something I've done for myself, and also like I'm hearing it through other tattoo artists as well, which makes complete sense. And now that we're starting to get into the convention space, so probably around 2016, I was the kind of anything and everything guy. I was like just doing whatever came through the door. That's what was keeping me busy. But I wasn't doing the stuff that I wanted to, which is like large scale black and gray realism sleeves, right? But what ended up changing the trajectory, and this has happened at several different times in my career, I had to find people to put it on, whether it's at like a reduced price or for free, to just be like, to show people like, this is what I can do, this is what looks great, and this is what I'm excited about. And it took time for me to like do that, because at first I started with portraits. I just wanted to find like several clients who would let me do amazing portraits on them, and I got like existing clients to come back in because they've been like clients and patrons for quite some time. So like, hey, I want to do some free portraits on you. And they would come in, they would do it, eventually we start to like build that out of sleeves. And then I got a couple of clients to like artists I work with, people I work with at the shop. And I was like, hey, let's work on like a large project, whether it's like your sleeve or your leg. And then what I ended up starting to do was like, not only do you get a chance to like post that stuff online, but then you get to like do the work at conventions, you get to bring them around. And then that creates this new sensation, this new buzz of like, well, what the fuck is this? Like, who did this, right? And especially when you're around conventions and you have clients there, I would have to like invest in like bringing some of these people with me, so that they can now just be at the convention and be at the booth. Because for people to see work in a portfolio and in person is a different feeling. Like if they can see it live in person with no filter, it's there in the flesh, and they can hear about how long it's been healed, it creates such a lasting impression because they're looking at it relative to all the other work that they've seen in person recently. So this year, and I want to start to talk to you about that, we've got 6 conventions planned for us together. I'm going to do a 7th one, but I think our first one's in Charlotte next month.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be tattooing your brother while you're out there.
Yep.
So it's one of those things of like, whatever you do, like each piece that you tattoo the show, like make it amazing, that represents the new direction that you want to take your artwork, and then just continue to like snowball those types of projects or clientele, and like see if they can just keep going to other shows too, because that's going to be like a big boost for people being aware of what you do.
No. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this like Charlotte show. We got like I'm not gonna give any sneak peeks just yet, but we got some shit cooking. Yeah. I'm excited to work on these pieces.
Yeah, so we've got Charlotte in March, New York Empire State, which is in May, and then we're going to Houston in June. I'll be in Chicago end of June, and then we're planning for California in September, Dallas in October, and then San Antonio in November.
Nice.
So we've got a lot of shows coming up, and that's already a lot. Like I used to do like 6 to 8, and we've got it planned where it's almost like every other month to try to spread it out. But it's cool because I want to hit some of my favorite shows, but also definitely the ones around Texas, to like bring people aware, because I think it's so much easier for people to travel in Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. Like we're right in the middle of all those places. So it's cool like when we can have the time. You have until June for Houston, and then you've already got a cool project booked for that one. Yeah.
I feel like that definitely can potentially turn into like a staple thing that's just mine.
Yeah. So what's that? What's the staple that you want to do? Because while we're here, while people are watching, if they follow your work and if they're hearing like the stuff that you want to do, get it out there, right? Whether you're posting about designs or talking about it on social media or even here on the podcast, we'll make a little clip of it. So like, what's the type of artwork that you want to start doing more of?
So one thing I do want to start doing with tattoos is making like similar style tattoos to like the paintings that I do, like the multicolors that just have like the characters on them and different things like that, just to make something different. Like everybody, like tattooers who stand out the most, I feel like they have something that makes their work different. whether it's like personality or just the look of the work itself. And like there are artists, some you don't even know what they look like, but you know what their work looks like. But I want to be able to split up and do both. Like I want people to also know like this is the type of personality that you're getting whenever you're coming in to get a tattoo, but also like this is what the work looks like, and this is like the energy that you get off of it. Like it's very bright, it's loud, and it has like its own personality to it on its own.
Yeah, I love like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of your paintings in here.
Yeah.
And it's nice because when we spread it out, it really just brings that life in. And I'm super happy like we're starting to get more artwork up.
Yeah. The white walls, I feel like complements these type of paintings so well.
Yeah.
So well. Like it's perfect. Like just because the colors are always like so bright and loud, like on that like clear white, like it just comes straight forward.
Yeah. So we've got our marathon that you did your half marathon. We've got a bunch of conventions coming up. Anything else that you have coming up that you're excited about for this year?
I feel like the conventions is definitely like kind of my highlight for this year. I'm really excited just because we're going to so many, but on top of that, like one thing I get to kind of look at on a regular basis is like the convention awards that we have like hanging on our wall here. And that was when you went on like people come in and they're like, oh, like you guys have won so many awards. And it's like, yes, kind of, sort of. Not really. Like he won all of these.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's still kind of like mind blowing knowing that these were collected in like 3 years worth of time. And it's like over 100 awards over like such a small frame. And it's like, okay, this is like part 2 of like the convention tear. And I'm like, okay, I'm excited to be able to see it, but also like play my own part in it. See if I can like bring home a couple for myself.
Yeah. That's exactly how that happened, is exactly what I had told you.
Yeah.
And I spent some time studying like, well, what makes the pieces that won at these shows? And I went to like some big shows. I'm like, what made the previous year's winners like take them away? And for me, it was just like, as far as the black and gray category, things that were large in size, things that had like depth, things that had a mixture of like details and styles. Because all right, on all these pieces that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna like make this like my thesis, right? And it's gonna be like, here's a collection of like all the things that I know, all the techniques put together, and it was good for its time. I don't know if I can continue to do the same thing and if it would wow judges on today's standard, because you see the artwork that's out now and it's all so different. Yeah. Like you were saying, the artists that were known for their time, for what they did, were almost like the first of their kind. Yeah. And then maybe more artists afterwards start to like work in similar styles. So it kind of like diminishes the style slightly, but the artists who really stick to what they do, that's what they've cultivated. That's what they're developing. What I'll say over all these years, and I knew this going into conventions, like if I don't win, like that's okay. Like it did, and I was always prepared to not win, but I always had an extra backpack packed to like bring home trophies. And if you get to win them, great. It's great marketing for the convention weekend. It's great marketing for online or for when clients come in to do consultations or just sit in your chair. But I've always known and understood that getting into magazines, getting into books, or getting awards don't attach that to your identity, to kind of go back to what you're saying. Because if you never get it, I know some amazing artists who still want to win one just for the sake of winning one. But I'm like, your work is still amazing. But it's like, yeah, but I'd like to at least win one, And then you get on this point where like, if you just win a bunch, at some point, like, it stopped meaning stuff to me too. Like I stopped collecting them and I would just let my clients keep them. I was like, you can take it. Like I was just stacking them in a corner and it didn't even feel good anymore. But it also got to a point of like, when you're doing conventions, when you're the new guy, everyone's like rooting for you, supporting you. But then after a couple years, people would see you at a show and be like, oh, you're here. Like, you're gonna bring home more trophies? Like, who did you bring this time? Or they'd be like, oh, I guess I should just pack my machine and go home. And it's like, you kind of lose some peers or, colleagues or, friendships along the way. Like, people just kind of like, because they're there to also win too.
I wonder why that is. Whenever somebody, like, that's a thing in a lot of areas, like especially like in sports. I feel like whenever you see somebody who's like the underdog, they haven't won before, they're the new guy, you're like, oh, I'm rooting for this guy. He ain't won nothing. Yeah. But as soon as that guy does start winning, they're like, we need this guy to lose soon.
So once you're at the top, everyone's after you, right? Yeah. Everyone wants to, because it's no longer a fun story to watch, right? We love the Rocky stories, we love the Michael Jordan come up story. But it's one of those things that, like, even when we were watching the last Super Bowl is the only time we watch football in my house. But Ellie was like, Papa, who do you want to win? Do you want the Chiefs or do you want the Eagles? I was like, I kind of want them both to win, right? Because it was like, I like that the Eagles may get their third one. Like, I want to see them win. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm rooting for these guys. And then as the Eagles were starting to, like, whoop their ass, I'm like, this is looking bad. I hope the Chiefs can make a comeback because they're underdog for that time. And once we got to like end of third quarter, I was like, oh, we don't need to watch the rest of this. Like,
after halftime, it was over. Yeah. It was over before halftime. But obviously, you know what I'm saying, we show up as we're winners around here. But I feel like even that's a thing, like when Tom Brady was winning, people were so tired of Tom. Yeah. And I feel like people don't appreciate that thing, like that winner, until that winner is not around anymore to do what they were doing to win. Like, I feel like, especially like in his case, like he gets so much more love now that he's like an announcer out of the game. And people can like see it, appreciate it, and kind of be like in awe of like how he played the game. Yeah. But if he was playing you on Sunday, you were like, man, I can't wait to see. I want something bad to happen to this guy.
I hope you break your legs.
Like, and that's insane in the moment, Like, same thing with like athletes like LeBron. Mm-hmm. Like, there was a point in time where people were like, oh, like I want this kid to win. Yeah. And then when he started winning, they were like, man, I'm tired of seeing him on the biggest stage every time. Yeah. And it's like that's just what happens occasionally, like when you are that good at what you do. Yeah. And I feel like that just comes with the territory. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to be able to change it. Like, you can't change how people see you, especially when it comes to being a winner. Like, I wouldn't want to be a fucking loser and then have you like me. Like, that sounds whack.
So for me, it's like, after COVID, we stopped doing conventions. I did my first one last year. And like, I'd like to get back out there. And I did a piece with Matilda last year. And I was just super happy with the creative process, the tattooing, the finished product. And it didn't win. I'm like, cool, I'm still good with it, right? We all love the experience and the piece. I'd love to still be able to go out there and see if I can like hang with, who's out there today. And I don't think I've been tattooing a long time, but you do it for like 14 years and you have the streak at some of these conventions. It's like, all right, like the idea is like give other people a chance. I'm like, well, you don't want to win if it's just kind of like handed out to you, right? Like you want to compete with the best. And if that's your purpose, if you want to go out to convention to do a purpose, what I will say for this year's conventions, I got to a point where I was just like, all my trophies were in the attic. I didn't want to do any more shows. I was good with just being a private studio and just me working on my clients and progressing my craft. But I also understood, I feel like a sentiment or maybe even an importance of working with other artists and newer young artists who are like, I've been hearing that, I want to do conventions. I'm like, all right, for the sake of like everyone else too, it may not necessarily be what I wholeheartedly want to do, but I see an exciting element to it. I'm like, all right, cool, let's start planning group conventions together. And it wasn't like this big, like, oh, I'm gonna like bring 5 clients to every show, and that's what happens. Like you bring a bunch of clients and like we're gonna see like how many we can take home. But this year's just like, well, let me go support, let me go do some great pieces, and if we enter, we win, great, cool. But if not, it's just kind of like to kind of get back out into the space. And that's been my theme for this year. Last year was doing more with less. This year is to get out there more, whether it's doing the podcast, posting more, or doing different types of artwork, or doing these conventions. I feel like now I've been in hermit mode for a few years. I've kind of cultivated the space and the energy that I like, and I'm like, all right, we got to get back out there, you know. So I'm super excited for this year, and 6 shows is a lot. Yeah. But we're gonna like go through the experience. We're gonna learn through it, and then each one subsequently becomes more smoother, more refined. It becomes better. But yeah, I'm looking forward to like getting into that headspace of like, well, if you want to compete within that arena, like, yeah, show up ready, show up prepared, and I'm looking forward to you sharing what you create.
I appreciate it. I'm excited too.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be a fun year with these conventions.
Yeah. That's the first time I started doing this, but let everyone know your Instagram, where they can follow you, and anything else you want to share.
My Instagram is Dontavious Davis _ Pretty sure there's an underscore in there. When you type in Dontavious Davis, you'll find me. What else was that?
Anything else you want to share?
Nah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. It's good talking to you. Like I feel like you're a really solid person. You're always willing to take on challenge. You've got a really positive headspace. Your artwork, your painting is amazing, and your tattooing is progressing. So I'm happy and honored to share this era of life that we're both in. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you grow.
I appreciate you too, Chief. It's been fun being here.
Yeah, man.
Wouldn't change nothing.
Good stuff.